Good evening, everybody. Let's start with our motivation. And sometimes in our life, it's become very crystal clear to us that our minds and their way of perceiving, their way of thinking are totally discordant with reality. That somehow the way we think things are is not exactly how they are. So we may have had a glimpse of that got us going on the path, but the idea is to really develop that understanding so that it brings forth a very clear comprehension of how the root of our difficulties lies in our own mind and its misconceptions and misapprehensions, so that we'll generate a strong determination to be free of this situation, to be free of cyclic existence. And then seeing that everybody else's mind is equally filled with misconceptions and misapprehensions. To extend compassion towards them, understanding that all the difficulties and suffering they experience also arise due to this ignorance and these afflictions, and thereby generate compassion for all other living beings. And then use this to fuel our compassionate aspiration to purify our own mind of the ignorance, misapprehensions, afflictions, misconceptions, wrong views, all these things, so that we can be of the greatest benefit to all living beings through fulfilling our own potential completely at the state of Buddhahood. And so with that as our long-term motivation, let's listen and discuss the Buddha's teachings this evening. So we've been talking about Aryadeva's text, the 400, in preparation for Geshe Topge's coming here in July, which I highly recommend people attend those teachings. And so the first 4 chapters are on the 4 distortions, 4 of these ways of misapprehending phenomena that lead us to generate afflictions that create the dukkha and the whole situation in cyclic existence. So they're seeing things that are impermanent as permanent, seeing things that are dukkha, unsatisfactory in nature, as pleasurable, seeing things that are foul as beautiful, or another way to say it, things that are impure as pure, and seeing things that lack a self as having a self. Okay, so our mind is chock-a-block full of these 4 distorted graspings or distorted conceptions, and they lie behind the afflictions, the ignorance, the confusion and attachment, laziness, resentment, belligerence, arrogance, lack of integrity, lack of consideration of others, all these things that so often plague our mind and create the cause of more unsatisfactory experiences. So we finished the chapter on seeing impermanent things as permanent, and discussed a lot about specifically gross impermanence, which is death, our own death, and a little bit about subtle impermanence. And then we started the second chapter, which is about seeing things that are in the nature of dukkha, unsatisfactory in nature, because they are produced through ignorance, afflictions, and karma. Seeing all these things, this distortion sees all these things as not as unsatisfactory, but as pleasurable. Okay? So we've been going through all these Joe Blows, yeah, who are putting up their argument about, samsara can't, all these things, things can't be suffering because the rich people have nothing but pleasurable experiences from birth to death. Yeah, so they, put forth arguments like that. So today we're going to start at verse 34. So here the argument that Joe Blow is putting forth is, and Joe Blow, by the way, is our own mind. Okay, all of our, our own misconceptions percolating up, saying, but, the way I see things, the way I apprehend things is really true. Don't tell me that I have distorted perception and distorted views. Okay, so the next thing Joe Blow says is, though physical and mental suffering exist, we don't notice them because great pleasure makes them insignificant. Right? And I mean, a lot of these things, it's very interesting. I hear people say at Dharma courses, the new people who come along say this. Okay, physical, mental suffering exists, but the pleasure is so powerful that it makes all these piddling things just insignificant. Okay, so what Aryadeva responds is, pleasure is governed by thoughts. Thoughts are governed by pain. Thus, there is nothing anywhere more powerful than pain. Okay, so what this means is there's no pleasure that can make pain insignificant. Because pleasure depends on thoughts, and our thoughts are governed by pain. Okay? So, for example, when we think of ourselves as a benefactor, being very generous and kind to other people, then mental pleasure arises. But that pleasure, that mental pleasure, that thought that arises, is stopped by fear that our wealth is going to run out. Okay? So we have a thought that brings some pleasure, but then that thought, the next thought it generates is a thought of fear that is painful. Oh yes, I'm generous. Oh, that's nice. Oh, but my funds are going to run out, and my wealth is going to run out. What's going to happen once the stock goes down? And so all this fear comes. Okay, so the arising and ceasing of pleasure is governed by thoughts. I mean, as in this example. Yeah. We have a thought, oh, this will make me happy, and temporarily that does, and then, the thought changes, and we're miserable again. Okay? It's kind of like, when you're waiting in the lunch line, and you look, and there's something you really like Nutella, which I can't stand, but somebody in this room likes, and all the thing of, oh boy, Nutella, that palm oil that's going to block my arteries, it's going to taste so wonderful. I can't wait to get it, and then pleasure comes. And then the next thought is, but the bottle's almost empty and there's 5 people ahead of me in line, and what happens if it's gone? And then the mind turns to pain. Okay? So this is a very gross example, but we have things like this all the time. You know, it's like even somebody, we get asked to give, we've been pining away. Oh, how come somebody doesn't ask me to lead a meditation? How come I can't do one of the BBC talks or give a Dharma talk? And then finally somebody asks you and you go, oh, wow, that means that they have confidence in me. This is wonderful. I get to do it. And then the thought after that is, what am I going to say? And they might criticize me too. Yeah. So all of this pleasure and pain depends on our thoughts. Yeah. So, and since pleasurable thoughts are destroyed by painful thoughts, yeah, they're governed by pain. Therefore, there's no pleasure that is more powerful than pain. Yeah. So it's kind of like, I can't remember if we did this example last week or not, but you could be in a completely, sitting on the beach with Prince Charming and everything's wonderful. Yeah, and you feel loved, and you're in your bikini, and it's all the guys are thinking you're so attractive, and you're kind of lapping it up, and then all it takes is one gust of wind and you get sand in your eyes, and all that pleasure is gone. Gone. So you could have such a nice situation, but any little thing, yeah, makes it go. So, you can see that our lives, in a way, all the time, we're just walking on the edge, of great pain. Because the causes could ripen at any moment. For a disease, for an injury, we wake up every morning and we could be killed that day, we could have a heart attack or stroke that day, we could be injured in a car accident that day. And everybody who those things happen to today woke up in the morning thinking, life is great. Yeah? So we're always right on that edge. So how can we say that pleasurable feelings overpower pain? Yeah? When pain is there ready to ripen, So the point here is not to get terrified of pain and become a hypochondriac, and you can't go outside or anything, but to see that all of this is due to the condition of being in samsara, and thus have renunciation of the dukkha of samsara and the causes of that dukkha, the ignorance and afflictions and polluted karma. That's the purpose of teaching this. Okay, so now Joe Blow says, okay, although pleasure is hard to find, it does no harm. But since pain harms, it is if alien to the body. Okay? So pleasure is hard to find, but pleasure doesn't harm us. So pleasure is an alien, alien to our experience. But pain harms us. So that's something that's like alien. It doesn't belong there. So Aryadeva says, with the passage of time, pain increases. Pleasure, therefore, seems as if alien to the body. Saying completely the opposite of what Joe Blow said. So Aryadeva is saying the pleasurable sensations are not natural to the body, okay, because we have to do a lot to get them. The body by itself, just sitting there, doesn't feel pleasurable. Does it? You can see this in your meditation. You sit down on the cushion, and does your body feel pleasurable? And does your pleasure increase? No. No. Okay. But actually, as time passes, discomfort and suffering increase, not pleasure. Okay. So for example, our body's aging all the time, and so our pleasure is gradually decreasing and our discomfort and pain gradually increasing, just with the passage of time, We have to do a whole lot to give this body pleasure, but without doing anything, the body experiences discomfort and pain. And that's just the nature of a body that is controlled by ignorance, afflictions, and karma. So that's why we want to renounce them. So pleasure seems alien to the body, like a visitor who only stays a short time. It is true, the body feels comfortable just a short time, and then it starts feeling uncomfortable again. Yeah, we eat a meal, feel good for a while, then hungry again. Yeah, we lie down, go to sleep. It's pleasurable, but we can't even stay awake to enjoy the pleasure. And then we have the pain of waking up, and then our body's stiff and everything like that. Yeah, it's so strange how we're so attached to sleep, but we're not even awake to enjoy it. Yeah, isn't that strange? We say, oh, sleep. But we're sound asleep. We don't even experience the pleasure from it. Strange, isn't it? Okay.
There's a question from the listener.
Okay.
What if we are constantly thinking of benefiting others like the bodhisattvas? Doesn't that transcend pain if that is their continuity of thought?
Doesn't that what?
Transcend pain if you have a continuity of thoughts.
Okay, so if you have a continuity of thoughts of benefiting others, isn't that going to make your mind continually happy? Yes, but here we're talking about our ordinary mind that's under, a mind that doesn't practice the Dharma, the ordinary mind, okay? Yeah. But even in our ordinary state, what if we constantly think of practicing, of benefiting others, at some point our self-centeredness arises and we go, I'm exhausted. I want somebody to benefit me. So, the whole thing is, what we're getting at is unless we eliminate the root ignorance, there's no way to have a total continuity of pleasurable thoughts or beneficial thoughts. Because something's always going to come up and say, It's true, isn't it? Yeah? You have a good meditation session, so full of bodhicitta, and then it's like, oh, I'm tired. Yeah, can somebody do something for me too? So that's the ordinary mind. Then verse 36, okay, here Joe Blow says, though the body's nature is suffering, the causes of pleasure act as a remedy. Okay, therefore we don't need to feel aversion. Like why renounce samsara? Because, okay, the nature of the body is dukkha, is unsatisfactory, but there's so many causes of pleasure, and they act as a remedy. There's still, you can see, the mind is still saying, but I am going to find some happiness in samsara. For sure, there's something. Okay, so Aryadeva says, there seem to be many causes of suffering, like sickness and others, but humans do not seem to have as many causes of pleasure. Okay. So he's saying there's many causes for physical suffering. Some of them are internal, like sickness. We've all been sick. We know we all will be sick if we live long enough to be sick. So we have internal causes of suffering, and then we have external causes of suffering, things that injure us. Yeah. And we don't have nearly as many causes for pleasure. And even the things that will cause us pleasure sometimes cause us injury and sickness as well. Okay? Like, you know, we were talking last weekend with Oklahoma, you build a house to protect your body and give you safety, and then that house collapses on you. Okay? You get pets to make you happy, and then they bite you. I won't mention names. Yeah, but things that give us pleasure in a totally different situation, they give us pain. So there's no consistent, reliable cause of pleasure that can, for sure, overwhelm discomfort and pain. So since dukkha does occur constantly, we should feel aversion to it, and that aversion should lead us to renunciation. Okay. Now Joe Blow is saying, but if pleasure didn't exist, it couldn't increase or intensify. But since it does, real pleasure does exist. Okay? So if pleasure didn't exist, like, you know, you Aryadeva is saying, you know, then it couldn't increase or intensify, but it does increase or intensify. So it must, you know, we must have real pleasure. So Aryadeva says, with the intensification of pleasure, its opposite is seen to occur, with the opposite being pain. With the intensification of pain, there will not likewise be its opposite. Okay, so through the increase of pleasure, its opposite, pain, occurs, but not vice versa. Okay, so what is this pain that occurs when you have an increase of pleasure? First of all, fear that the pleasure is going to stop. Fear of losing it. Yeah, and if we really look closely in our mind, whenever there's some feeling of pleasure, underneath there's some anxiety because, you know, we're hoping beyond hope it'll last forever, but all of our previous experience has shown that it doesn't. Yeah. Why doesn't it last forever? Because it's under the control of afflictions and polluted karma. That's why. Okay? So when we have pleasure, then conflicts occur. People get jealous of us. People are miserable. I was reading an article in the New York Times that there was this heiress from the copper mining industry, you know, copper mining in Montana. Her father, grandfather, somebody was made a fortune out of copper, and she was in a hospital in New York, and then all the hospital staff, everybody's trying to get her to give a donation to the hospital. Yeah. So, you know, she did, which I think is good, you know, and I personally don't see anything particularly wrong with the hospital asking her for a donation. But the point is that when you have wealth, then you're going to have lots of people coming and asking you for part of it. Yeah, and they're going to come and bug you and try and manipulate you and everything like that. So whenever we have something that gives us pleasure, then there's a very good chance that somebody else is going to be jealous of us. Yeah, so then you have to enjoy your pleasure, but you can't really gloat about it, even though sometimes, you know, the self-centered mind wants to gloat, and sometimes it does, but then when it does, then other people get jealous, and then other people's jealousy is very unpleasant to live with, isn't it? Have you had people be jealous of you before? Yeah? Have you had people be jealous of you? Yeah? I mean, remember when people are jealous of me, even in grammar school, you know, and it's like, oh, this feels awful. Yeah, so that kind of thing just, you know, interferes with your pleasure. So then you have to, like, enjoy your good things, but not let anybody know about it because they'll be jealous, or they'll try and sabotage you. You know, in an office situation, somebody might get some recognition, and then the other co-workers get jealous, and they try and do something to interfere. You know, this is samsara, isn't it? Yeah? So conflicts with others increase when we have pleasure, because we have to defend our stuff. We have to deal with those who are jealous of us, and some of those people may really seek our ruin and do things that make us look bad or have misfortune occur out of their own jealousy. Yeah, happens all the time. However, as pain increases, there's no corresponding increase in pleasure to oppose it. When pain increases, actually the body and mind experience more and more agony, don't they? Yeah. So there's no pleasure that can act as an antidote to pain. There's no pleasure that arises that makes pain insignificant. Yeah. There's no pleasure that arises after pain, but in terms of discomfort and unsatisfactory experiences, you know, unhappiness always arises after that, and problems always arise. Okay. Then, verse 38, with the conditions for pleasure, its opposite is seen. Without the conditions for pain, there is not its opposite. So with the conditions for pleasure, yeah, then its opposite, pain, is going to come along eventually. But with the conditions that cause pain, you never see the opposite of pleasure coming along later. Okay? So when we overindulge in the causes of pleasure, okay, when we eat too much, its opposite, pain occurs. Okay? Together with, so that pain occurs together with the conditions for pleasure. Yeah, so here we're getting into the whole idea of the second kind of dukkha, the dukkha of change. Okay? But when we have prolonged contact with causes of pain, there's no pleasure that pops up. Okay? So verse 39, when you have spent or are spending and will spend time dying, it is not at all proper to call the process of dying pleasurable. Okay, so that Joe Blow had said, this was the answer to Joe Blow's question, that since the expression so-and-so has pleasure is used, then pleasure must exist. Oh, we talk about pleasure, we say so-and-so has pleasure, so there must be pleasure. And so Aryadeva says, when you have spent, are spending, and will spend time dying, it's not at all proper to call the process of dying pleasurable. So he's really cutting to the chase here. He's saying, conditioned things disintegrate in each moment. From the moment we're born, we are headed towards death. Okay, so we've already spent part of our life in the process of dying. Yeah, I've spent 62 years dying already. Yeah, we are spending time dying right this moment. And then we're going to spend time in the future dying as well. So I've spent 62 years in the process of dying so far. I don't know how many more until death occurs. So Aryadeva is saying, when this is the situation, it's really rather ridiculous to call the process of dying pleasurable. Okay, and it's true, isn't it? We always think of, there's living, and living has, the possibility of pleasure and good things. And then dying kind of happens to other people. Yeah, later on, and okay, maybe it'll happen to us, but really not for a long time. And then somehow, miraculously, we won't start dying until like 10 seconds before we actually die. And there won't be any discomfort and pain. Yeah, we're going to have one of those beautiful deaths. We're sure of it. We have it all planned out. Yeah. Okay, but Aryadeva is saying, why are you calling this long process of dying pleasurable? Yeah, it's not that dying starts 10 seconds before death. It starts the moment after birth. Yeah. So why are we, so attached to all of this? Okay, then verse 40. When beings with bodies are constantly afflicted by hunger and so forth, it is not at all proper to call being afflicted pleasurable. Okay, so before it's, we're dying all the time. How can you call that pleasurable? And now it's beings with bodies are constantly afflicted by hunger, by thirst, by aching bones, by sore muscles, by things in our eyes, by broken bones, by colds, by, toothaches, by bladder infections, So it's not at all proper to call being afflicted like that pleasurable. Yeah. Or so that was talking about physical suffering, but mental suffering too. We're always, our mind's always being afflicted. How often do we have a really happy mind during the day? Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, it's kind of what we watch our mind during the day, and we take every opportunity we can to grumble about something. I've been waiting 5 minutes for these people. I don't understand what they're talking about. Why are they doing things without consulting me? Why are they doing things after consulting me? Why are they doing things at all? Don't they need to know they should stop? Why aren't they doing something? Why are they just hanging around, not doing anything? It's like all the time. Our mind has some kind of complaining thought going on. Oh, I can't wait for lunch. It's taking so long for that bell to ring. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, there's lunch. Oh, they didn't make what I liked. Maybe tomorrow. Fat chance. Maybe I'll cook tomorrow and make what I like. Oh no, I don't want to do that. I'm too lazy. And besides, then everybody else will complain about my cooking. So all the time, the mind churning out unhappy thoughts. Yeah, and most of the time, of course, blaming these on other people or on the external situation. So Aryadeva says, it's inappropriate to think of suffering as pleasure, since embodied beings are constantly subject to different kinds of unsatisfactory conditions. Okay? So it's if we're all the time exposed to unsatisfactory conditions, then why are we thinking of that as pleasurable? Okay? It's not proper to call being afflicted by something pleasurable. Yeah, so if we're afflicted by negative thoughts, we're afflicted, due to our body, and both of our body and mind being produced by ignorance and afflictions and karma, then why call that pleasurable? Life in samsara isn't pleasurable. It's like someone who wants a promotion or recognition very badly gets that promotion or gets that recognition, and though it brings with it all kinds of problems, they think of it as pleasure. Okay? Yeah, so we can see that in our own life. Yeah, we want something and we get what we want, and then it brings problems with it, but then we still think of those problems as pleasurable. That's really rather foolish, isn't it? Problems are problems. Okay. Can you make an example of when you wanted something badly and you got it and it brought problems and you thought of those problems as pleasure? I think falling in love is an excellent example of this, isn't it? You know, you want it so bad, I want a relationship so bad, I want a relationship so bad. Then you have this relationship, you know, then whoever, you know, your partner is, they don't want you to do this and they want you to do that, and you get some fulfillment from the relationship, but then they always want to change you and they want to remodel you and, you know, and everything like that. And so you're having all these problems and you fight and quarrel and it's really unpleasant, but then you say, oh, I'm so much in love, this is really happiness. Yeah? And that's what people think, isn't it? Yeah? This relationship is so fulfilling.
And their family doesn't like you.
Yeah, their family doesn't like you, your family doesn't like them.
I have to think about going on vacations. A lot of times you have all this pre-vacation joy and anticipation.
Yeah.
And then you go and things happen.
Yeah, right. Yeah. That's my example later on. You just took it away from me. I'll make it anyway. Okay. Then verse 41. Though powerless, the combining of all the elements produces the body. Thus it is not at all proper to call what is incompatible pleasure. Okay? So, pleasure and pain depend on our body. And our body depends on the elements, okay? Our body is a combination of the elements, earth, water, fire, air, space. But the elements interfere with each other. So they say it's like having 4 or 5 snakes in a bottle. Yeah, it's not going to be a happy scene. Yeah, and so it's like putting all the 4 elements, or 5 elements if you include space, inside this sack, and and expecting them to get along like, snakes in a bottle. They, kind of dance together or something. No, the elements, contrast with each other, and then their imbalance is what causes us sickness. Yeah, so the imbalance of the elements, then the body falls ill. So, Aryadeva says, thus it's not proper to call a collection of incompatible and conflicting factors pleasurable, because that's what the body is. It's a collection of incompatible and conflicting things. And to call that pleasurable is just rather ridiculous. Yeah? So he just keeps hammering in, we keep thinking this body is the source of pleasure, and it's not. And you can see that our whole culture is in denial of this and propagates the philosophy of denial. I mean, it started off in the 60s with the body is beautiful. And, whatever you do, what is it? As long as it feels good, do it. Yeah, remember that one? And so we did it. And, and then continually, every movie, every commercial, everything is encouraging, that you're going to find some pleasure from this body. You wear certain clothes and that will give you pleasure. You go to the gym and get your body fit, that will give you pleasure. You have a Botox treatment, that's going to give you pleasure. You take Viagra, that's going to give you pleasure. Now they think they're going to invent something for women who aren't interested too. And, so every time kind of do this, go to this restaurant. Yeah, eat this fast food. Yeah, go to this park, go on vacation here, buy this car. All these things are going to give your body pleasure. Yeah, and so, we're kind of like mindless robots, and we just go along with it. And so we keep consuming and consuming and running here and running there and thinking it's all going to bring us pleasure. Yeah? And so we have a little burst of pleasure followed by back to the same old, same old. Yeah? And if we look, this is just the experience of having a body under the influence of afflictions and karma. This, we craved for this body, we grasped for this body, we got it. And now look. Okay, then verse 42. When there is never that which will relieve cold and so forth, it is not at all proper to call being destroyed pleasurable. Okay, so embodied beings never have effective means to do away with cold, heat, mosquito bites, okay, disagreeable people, all these kinds of things. So it's not proper to call being destroyed by harmful agents pleasurable. Okay, so since our body is always afflicted by different things, different factors that create discomfort and pain, and we don't have a method to effectively dispel all of these things. So it's not suitable to call being destroyed by these harmful elements something pleasurable. Okay, so clothing, soft seats, etc. are used to alleviate and prevent suffering. They're not used for pleasure. So if you think about it, we usually think, oh, this clothing will give me pleasure, this bed will give me pleasure. But actually, if we think about it a little bit more, we're using the clothing to alleviate some kind of pain. Yeah, maybe the pain of, not thinking good about ourselves, or the pain of being too cold, too hot, whatever. Yeah, we use bed, soft seats to alleviate the pain of sitting on the floor. Yeah, so all these things that we say we're doing to receive pleasure, actually, if you look at them closer, we're doing them to alleviate pain. Yeah? Does it make sense? Can you think of something that you're going to do that's really going to bring you pleasure that you're not doing to also alleviate some kind of pain?
Yesterday when we moved our rooms, for example, and we are not supposed to bring our blankets with us, and I had a moment where I spoke up and said, I need a warm blanket, so I would love to take mine with me because I'm afraid of freezing. But then there's this moment, is the attachment involved? Is it because I want pleasure having this? That was also a thought that maybe go around. So, but I had the thought I don't want to have pain at night.
Yeah, so. Right. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, you think I'll do this, but you're also thinking it'll bring me pleasure. The point is, exactly as you said, that these things that we do, we think they will bring us pleasure, but we're also doing them to prevent pain. Yeah? Okay. Okay, so if they were inherent causes of pleasure, they should always produce it, but they don't. Okay, so that blanket is not going to always bring you pleasure. Wait until July. You will want that blanket out of your room ASAP. Okay, it gets really hot in July. So it's not going to bring you always pleasure. Yeah? So anything that brings us pleasure in different circumstances, that same thing can bring us pain.
Alcohol is such a good example of that.
Yeah.
People drinking, wanting a little fun, but actually it's like you're so empty. You just want something.
Right. Yeah. So using substance use, not even abuse, but just use.
Right.
is a very good example of that. You know, that you take drugs, you take alcohol because you want some pleasure, and yet it doesn't solve the feeling inside. You know, it might medicate it temporarily, yeah, but it's not going to solve it, and it's only going to come back. And yet people still keep drinking, still keep taking drugs. Yeah. I mean, this shows a kind of desperation, doesn't it? Yeah, just a desperation with the whole samsaric condition of, you know, it's like the mind is screaming, but I just want to be happy, leave me in peace. And there's pain coming from every angle, so let me just take whatever reduces it temporarily. Okay? And so, you know, you get substance abuse, or you get shopaholics, or gamblingaholics, or sexaholics, or whatever. But, you know, somebody only becomes an aholic in our society if they do it to the point where it, you know, it seems really disturbing to other people and to themselves. But if they do it a little bit, it's called okay.
Normal.
Yeah, it's called normal. It's called having a good time, isn't it? It's having a good time.
Yeah, and it's like no matter what level you're at, you'll find, or, you know, as it escalates, you'll find a group of people who call it normal.
Right. Oh, yeah. Very good. Yeah. That as you're craving for whatever this thing is that you're using to, you know, cure your pain, as this craving increases, and your use of whatever it is, or your action, whatever it is, increases, then you're going to find a new group of people for whom doing that or taking that is normal. Yeah, you know. I mean, it's true. Yeah. I mean, you have one hit of meth, and then, you know, as you want more and more, you find more and more people who think that it's normal to just take meth all day. Yeah. Yeah.
I was thinking about all of my education in the sciences around the body, how all of that was presented. When I think about it, it was all presented as, look at this miraculous, wonderful thing.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's so
Right.
interesting
Yeah.
when I think about that now.
Yeah. Okay, so here we have one of the nuns who's a healthcare professional who's sharing that her whole education about her body, you know, in her training is, you know, look at this wonderful, magical thing.
We can somehow make it perfectly balanced.
Yeah. And we will somehow make it perfectly balanced. We will find a solution to all diseases, mental and physical. Yeah, we can do this. Yeah.
That's why they have whole books, medical libraries that are like city blocks big, because every part of the body falls apart.
Right. Yeah. 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 And the result is, yeah.
Washington is a block long.
Yeah, you have volume after volume of medical books, because every part of the body, something can go wrong with it. Multiple things can go wrong with it. Yeah. So here's this magical, beautiful, wonderful, miraculous thing that is constantly breaking down. You know, it's worse than our computer.
I saw a billboard in Boston that said, the person who will live to 150 is alive today. And I'm thinking, who wants to live to 150?
150, yeah.
People are so afraid of dying, they're like, oh, we're going to live to 150.
50, yeah. And we can do that within our lifetime, because that person is alive now. Yeah, oh boy. Okay.
Just a little bit of Botox.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, get my fat, you know, sucked off from here and put it somewhere else. You know. have some Botox, get new teeth, get new everything. Yeah.
And then no one will tell you're 150.
You'll be all replaced parts by the time you're 150.
I'm so proud of being 150, but you don't want anyone to be able to tell.
Yeah, right. Oh, you look so young.
Only about 100, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so if they were inherent causes of pleasure, they should always produce it, but they don't. Okay, so thus the antidotes to suffering and decreased suffering are mistaken for pleasure. Okay, so the things we do as antidotes to our suffering, here we're again talking normal, regular people, the things we do as antidotes to our suffering, I take refuge in the refrigerator, the computer, the car, the credit card. Yeah. That's what we take refuge in. So the things that we use as antidotes to suffering, and the states of when suffering does decrease a little bit, then we call that pleasure. Okay? So the process of overcoming suffering by means of antidotes shouldn't be mistaken for pleasure. Yeah. But it's amazing, this is what we call pleasure, that, whatever we're applying to solve our discomfort. Mm-hmm. Okay, getting the blanket is the antidote to your pain, your cold. Yeah, going to the shopping mall is an antidote to loneliness and dissatisfaction. Yeah, going out and having a fling is an antidote to this discomfort of sexual energy, which is uncomfortable, isn't it? Yeah. So, how can we call the things that we do to counteract that? How can we call the lessening of big suffering into small suffering pleasurable? But that's exactly what we do. We call, that's what conventionally is called pleasurable. Yeah, it's really kind of sad, isn't it? How we can't see the real condition we're in, and we keep trying to paint it to make it be something it's not. And we keep believing it's something it's not. There is some way to make this body always happy. There's some way to make my mind, there's some way beside practicing Dharma to make my mind always happy. Yeah, just give me the right things and that'll make my mind happy, and it doesn't. Okay, so we're back to Joe Blow here. So he says, since conventionally we say so-and-so is lying down comfortably, then real pleasure must exist. Because we say, oh, Maitri is lying down so comfortably on the chair. Yeah, so real pleasure must exist. Do you think Maitri's experiencing really real pleasure now? Yeah. With a mind that is so overwhelmed by ignorance that she can't understand the meaning of the Dharma teaching, even though she's in the room. She created the karma. Maitri's our cat. She created the karma to meet the Dharma, but not the karma to understand it once she met it. Yeah? So all of our actions, so Aryadeva responds to that. When on earth, no action is done without exertion. It is not at all proper to call performing actions pleasurable. Okay, so Joe Blow said, well, lying down, so-and-so's lying down, so comfortably, so that must be pleasurable. And Aryadeva is saying, yeah, but look at everything he had to do to get the bed to lie down on, to go over to the bed and lie down, and then to cover himself so he's, cool enough and warm enough, and and all those kinds of things. So all of our actions, lying down, walking, sitting, everything we do, are done with mental and physical exertion. So it's not proper to call all these tiring actions pleasurable. Yeah? And when you think about it, we have to really do a lot to get pleasure. And we think doing this thing is going to bring pleasure, but it's really rather exhausting. Yeah. So when you're young, you're not so, you're young and healthy, you're not so aware of the exertion. But when you're sick and old, then you are aware of how much exertion it requires to make this body happy. And so the daily actions we do to ensure the body's survival aren't performed for pleasure. They're performed to protect ourselves from suffering. Yeah? So, why do we eat? Because we don't want to be hungry. Yeah? Why do we sleep? Because we're tired of being tired. Yeah? So we have to do so much that is so exhausting in order for pleasure. Look at what we're going through to build Chenrezig Hall. And not only what we're going through, what all the guys are going through, what hard work it is for them, to build something so that we can have some pleasure and so that we can offer pleasure to other people. But this is, what we're really doing is, not just having pleasure, we're trying to prevent pain. We don't want people to come here and camp in the snow. Yeah. We don't want people to come here and be in a crowded dining room and not have enough bathrooms and so on and so forth. But it's like all this effort is exerted to prevent suffering. Yeah? Not just to have happiness, but really to prevent suffering. Okay, verse 44. In this life and in others, always one should guard against ill deeds. Calling them pleasurable is not at all proper when there are bad transmigrations. Okay, so people who are unwise do non-virtuous deeds for the sake of a little pleasure, and as a result, they experience suffering in this life and the next. Okay, so Aryadeva is saying, in this life and in others, in future lives, always one should guard against ill deeds. Okay, calling them pleasurable is not at all proper when there are bad transmigrations. So calling our negative deeds pleasurable is not suitable when they're going to bring unfortunate rebirths. Okay, so there's so many examples of this, of people who do non-virtuous things for some pleasure, but and they call it pleasure, but it's actually having the result of pain. Yeah. So here I was thinking, what was that guy's name? Bernie Madoff? Who did that whole, I don't know, some kind of scheme where he cheated all those people out of money? Ponzi scheme. Yeah, I don't know what it means, but I know it's naughty. Anyway, so he did all those things to get more money for himself, and yet and he called that happiness. But it's actually bringing him a lot of suffering in this life, and for sure in future lives. You look at John Edwards having that fantastic relationship with that woman, and then thinking this is the epitome of pleasure, and this is one of our politicians. Yeah, we have many more politicians that have affairs too.
Generals and
Oh, and military generals, and yeah, I mean, they're all kind of, presidents, they're all kind of, sleeping around, thinking, that is pleasurable. Actually, they're doing it to eliminate some kind of pain. But how can you call that pleasure when it brings them so many headaches in this life, and the negative karma they create for future lives where they're going to experience so much suffering too. So it's really ridiculous to call committing non-virtuous actions for a little bit of gain, to call that pleasurable when you're not thinking of the results. Okay? And I think here too of so many of the guys that I work with in prison who did something non-virtuous thinking it was going to bring them some pleasure or alleviate some pain, and then it brings them imprisonment in this life, and then whatever they experience in future lives due to it. Although, the one good thing, I was talking to one of the guys today, he said, the good thing about this life is I met the Dharma. So many of these people, if they hadn't been in prison, would never have met the Dharma. Yeah, so everything considered, I think they came out well, even though there was tremendous suffering, that they inflicted on others and that they accrued for themselves. Still, they met the Dharma, and that's giving them, the ability to change. So since people who are wise want happiness, they should guard against creating the causes of suffering through non-virtuous actions. When unfortunate rebirths result from actions done by the unwise for the sake of a little bit of pleasure, calling that pleasurable is not suitable. Okay, so we should guard against non-virtue just as one guards against an unknown enemy who is a constant source of fear. Yeah, so really, guard against non-virtue and have a mind that treasures virtue, that is conscientious, that is has mental alertness, introspective awareness to check what's going on in our mind, so that we will make sure we create the causes for happiness and not the causes for suffering. Yeah.
I'm fighting for an article about the environment, and one thing that was to research one point how human-made earthquakes are produced, and I found one thing, I didn't know that one, but obviously I don't know if it's only in America or in other countries, I assume also in other countries they inject wasted fluid from wasted fluids.
Wasted fluids.
hazardous materials from
From
wastewater.
weapon production, gallons of thousands, millions of gallons under the earth, and that gives some pressure. And what I want to say with it, it's this short-term thinking, and that is out of a polluted thinking or out of greed or whatever, and the long-term thing is not there existing. It's blended out, and that's exactly how we personally do it too, our own individual behavior.
Yeah, okay, so you're drawing a very good analogy here. Aryadeva was speaking for a little bit of happiness now. We create the causes of suffering now and for future lives. And you're saying that that's the exact same way that we're relating to the environment too. That for a little bit of pleasure now or to, out of greed, then doing things that ruin our planet and are going to bring suffering in our own lifetimes and certainly to future generations. So it's the same short-centered view, which we come back to our slogan, I want what I want when I want it. And that's the whole thing, fueling the whole the whole thing. No ability to restrain from fulfilling our desires in order to reap some good benefits. Yeah? But we see this is also how it's so easy to break our precepts too. You know, there's a little bit of something and I want it. It's not that bad. It's not really a catastrophe. Let's do it. And then, you know, we wind up with transgressions. Okay. And we wind up with environmental mess. So we need to be more aware of how our minds are functioning and kind of do something about that unwise and very dysfunctional way of seeing things.
It's very narrow-minded.
Very narrow-minded, yeah. Yeah, extremely narrow-minded. Okay. I didn't realize it was so late, so not much time for questions today, but I think there's a lot to think about.